Hi, everyone. We are back with How to Cope When Stuff Gets Real. I'm really loving that title because it feels very appropriate right now. My name is Katie. Debbie's here.
Hi.
And tonight we're going to talk about what happens when the world is on fire. And it's not just your world, your individual world, but the collective world. That world is on fire is very accurate with what's happening in LA. But I also think it's very accurate with what's been happening with all of our eco trauma that we're experiencing in all kinds of different levels. And this idea that our structures and our systems are changing and dismantling all around us, it does kind of feel like things are, being transformed right now. And I started a painting a few weeks ago because that's one of the ways that I'm trying to navigate and staying focused. And I started painting a fire phoenix a few weeks before everything that happened in
Of
LA.
course you did.
And I got the download that this is the energy of 2025, not at all to make light of the devastating fires in LA, but this energy of how do we rise up through these tragedies and through these things that are happening, and how do we claim that energy of transformation in a way that doesn't burn us to the ground, right? How do we stay centered? How do we stay whole as we navigate all of this transformation? And so my heart goes out to everybody in LA and everybody still in Western North Carolina who's dealing with the hurricanes and living in sheds with no heat. And we're having all these crazy deep winter storms. And everybody in Virginia who's been through earth and water shortages and all the things that Debbie will tell us about that's happening in her neck of the woods. And just everybody around the world that is dealing with these eco traumas and the things that are happening in our collective and the wars and everything that's happening. So tonight we're going to talk about how do we keep our stuff together? How do we stay centered? How do we stay in love through that process? So here we are. So,
Mhm.
Debbie, why don't you talk a little bit about what happened to you in the last couple of weeks and what happened around you in Virginia and some of your experiences, because I think you've been at the epicenter of a couple of things recently that might be enlightening for people.
Sure. Well, first there was a winter storm, and I think the people here thought that, okay, that's it. This is our one winter storm, and it will just be pretty, and then it will melt, and that will be it. And that's not the case. Um, and then in between that and the next storm, the water treatment plant broke in Richmond. Or the backup system failed or something like that. So the city of Richmond did not have any water for a few days at all. And then as the week went on, I think we had water, but we had to boil it for everything, so we couldn't really use it. They were bringing in emergency shipments from other places. So, it was weird for me, walking through the grocery store and seeing empty aisles because people were freaking out, just buying everything.
Mhm.
Uh, so, and then after that, we had another storm. And then after that, I was driving down the road to go to the sauna, my sauna place, and the traffic stopped and I felt my car shake. And I thought, oh, not great. What's going on with my car? And then when I got to the sauna place, they were freaking out because there was an earthquake that just happened. And what was unusual about it was that there was this loud explosion prior to all the shaking. So people in the shopping area where the sauna place is, they were all running around because they thought we were being bombed. So then they realized it was an earthquake, and then we had a second earthquake in the middle of the night that I didn't feel. So yeah, so that just happened in 1 week, 10 days really. So yeah.
And we can look at that and we can say, okay, everybody's okay.
Yeah.
Everybody got the resources that they needed. And it was also really scary, I'm sure, for a lot of people. And there's, as the guides told me during the hurricane, when I was doing some work to try to get the word out about that in Western North Carolina, they kept reminding me that there's no hierarchy in trauma.
Mm.
That for you in that moment, going through something really scary is very acute and all encompassing. And yes, you made it through and everything's fine and you're fine and the community's fine. And there are plenty of places that are not fine after their trauma. But what happens to an individual in that moment when this gets triggered, there's a commonality and a human to human commonality in that of how we go through something and how that's kind of an equalizing energy.
Mm.
And so I'm curious for you, like what you noticed around you and how people reacted and like what happened for you when you were trying to hold your center in those moments.
I well, for me, it's different than the people around me because I'm used to where I grew up, what had very extreme weather.
Mm.
So I'm more used to it where they were just like, oh my gosh, the snow is actually staying on the ground and what's going to happen and it's so cold and now we have no water and I'm sort of a little bit more used to it, but also a little bit more traumatized by weather. So I have a totally different reaction and my tendency is to go into that mode where I'm hyper vigilant about things and I know from growing up with extreme weather and extreme weather trauma that I tend to buy extra, like just in case. And, and then the other tendency that I have when something like that happens is I have this like urge to circle the wagons and like have this big fantasy of like, okay, all the people that I love, we need to live in like one small little village. That's what needs to happen. Like we
You're
all
going
need
to
to
be
be
safe.
together because I don't like everybody being all over the place. I just want everybody near me, the people that I love. So that's how I sort of that's my natural, tendency when something like that happens.
I got
That's
you.
yeah, it brings that up for me.
And that's the probably the mother in you too, and the protector that wants to keep everybody around you safe. And that's interesting that you bring that up because one of the things that I've been working on with a lot of people in sessions the last couple of weeks is their addiction to being the protector and the savior for those around them who may not be making the best choices for themselves,
Mm.
and how we can help, but we can only help if we're taking care of us first. And so how do we respond in a crisis situation, and how do we take care of those around us is dependent on how deeply we know how to care and regulate our own system. I think we have a lot of really dysregulated people in the collective, myself included sometimes, who go down the rabbit hole of the fear that gets activated around these events.
So I know that the one thing that I do crave because I've had so much trauma in my life is stability, and I have like, now I have tools for that where I didn't have tools where I would just stay in that hypervigilance. So, Katie, what would your advice be for rebuilding a sense of stability when people are going through this, something like that?
Well, number one is I think you have to be exactly where you are in the moment. So, what I sometimes find when I'm working with people, especially I noticed this after the hurricane because I somehow spirit worked it out where the people that had pre-booked sessions months before had just been through the hurricane right after, they had a session right after. And so I was kind of like working with people in the moment of them having witnessed this terrible thing in Western North Carolina and trying to navigate that. And I always just brought them back to, okay, well, what do you feel in your body right now? What's happening in your body right now? I know you want to get to a regulated place. I know you want to get to a place where you've moved past this, but let's process what's happened in this moment and let's be with all the parts and all of their reactions, including the part that wants to go save people and the part that's probably freaking out and feeling really unsafe themselves, and maybe the frozen parts and the little kid parts that don't know what to do and are angry or confused or sad about what's happening to them in their community. And so it's really just kind of being in a state of deep presence with what is. And then as we find those aspects that are having reactions, what support do those individual parts need so that over time, and we don't need to dictate how long that takes, over time, those parts can find a recentered, stable place. And oh, by the way, you probably need some body work or something for your body to be supported in just regulating your nervous system. And it can't just be energy work and meditation. You can't meditate your way out of a trauma response like that because the brain is freaking out And so oftentimes I guide them into a breath practice or a movement practice or even holds and push pressure on the body so that they can actually just get in their body and see what's going on. And then we go into the energy work and the meditation and the mindfulness practices. Those are great after you've pulled out of that initial response of hypervigilance, but you can't really use meditation in the moment because you can't go into meditation when things are literally falling apart around you, right? You have to actually be able to take action, and the only way you can do that is if you're in your body.
Hmm. Now, my advice would be because sometimes it's prolonged. I've been in a situation where it was weeks without electricity in the winter, with no heat, no water, no cell phone, anything. It was really just like doing the next, doing something and then doing the next thing and then doing the next thing. I guess like the saying is like yard by yard, it's hard, but inch by inch, it's a cinch. And like that's it, like just doing the next thing and really being even more mindful of my energy, like the conversations that I'm having, what I'm consuming, if I have my phone, what I'm really looking at, how I'm taking in the news, how I'm keeping updated with the situation. I'm really mindful of that and always also looking for the helpers because there's always helpers. Um, and I would also say that I love the explanation that the opposite of anxiety is creativity and that the first step is curiosity. So I would probably reframe the questions that I am asking myself, like instead of saying, "Oh my God, why is this happening?" saying, "Really, why is this happening? Why is this in my movie?" So that's helpful to me. Yeah, in the midst of it all.
And I think there isn't a hierarchy in trauma and how the body might experience it. I think the people, I imagine the folks in LA and even some of the people still in Western North Carolina who are still trying to recover, they're focused on survival and the basics and what I would call our root chakra needs and having everything that they need to just feel like a human. And I think those of us who maybe were outside of that trauma area where that eco trauma might be happening have an opportunity to keep it in perspective of what we have access to in that moment and just affirming everything that we have access to in that moment and realizing that we can regulate and we might have some support that we can bring to those that don't have those resources. And so I think sometimes some of us go into freeze and we don't know how to help or be a helper. But other people, I know for me, after the hurricane, it was like it propelled me to need to do more and show up more. And I'm working on longer term projects for that too, because it felt like, okay, this is something that I can do to contribute to help make this situation better. And I do have a platform and I do have resources and I do have ideas and I can get creative and I can help people who maybe are just in that survival mode and just need that community. And so sometimes when we get plugged into giving back, that can help us actually heal from whatever our trauma experiences are too, as long as it's done in a healthy way, right? Where we're not over giving to depletion.
I know when I'm in the midst of something and also being in this situation with the no water and watching LA burn at the same time, giving back was not what I was thinking of at the moment.
I think there's groups of people who are going through these experiences who need one thing and might have a certain set of resource needs and capacity. And then those of us that are watching these things take place and are feeling powerless and helpless, maybe it's not happening in our region or in our place. What I keep hearing from Mother Earth, because she's been talking to me a lot since the hurricane and been giving me very specific directions about how she wants me to contribute going forward with this continued process that we're going to be in where things are happening like this. And she said, this is the equalizer for humanity. Specifically, when the fire was happening, I thought, oh my gosh, these people in Western North Carolina are getting re-triggered by this disaster. And I watched some of them go into helper mode. And even though they didn't have all the resources they needed, they were sending their love to this place that they could commiserate with and these people that were going through this really hard thing. And then I saw other people who were responding in anger of, well, where were you when we needed your help?
Hmm.
And I think all of those reactions are valid, but what Mother Earth kept saying is, Katie, this is happening because I need humans to start humaning better. And it's not happening because it's a punishment, because, you all are not taking care of me. And this is speaking from Mother Earth. But this is happening because humanity needs ways to rise up and support one another and come together at a human to human level, separate from the systems and separate from the politics and separate from all the stuff that's going on in the polarity. And if they're saying, well, why didn't you help me? So I'm not going to help you, we're missing the mark. And I know that's a natural reaction when we feel like we haven't been supported. Why would we want to support someone else? But sometimes these situations are calling for us to look beyond our individual experience too. If we have the resources to, even we can just send love and share in that experience that they're having and say, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. If that's all that we can do, it still creates healing on both sides.
Hmm.
And this is complicated because these are things that are totally out of our control. I think that there are definitely things we could be doing different as a collective to prevent certain things and to make things easier for us to navigate. But largely, these things are not, an earthquake is not in our control. A hurricane is not in our control. Winter storm and a fire is not in our control. And so this is also a lot about surrender.
Agreed. It's all about surrender, really. But what do you think we could be doing as a collective?
Oh boy.
Because I just have such reverence for nature, and then to see it just can be so harsh. Gosh, what could I be doing for that?
I have lots of thoughts on this. Some people may or may not agree, but at the very most basic level, when Mother Earth chats with me, because she and I have been really talking a lot since 28, she just wants humans to acknowledge and know her. And so when we're building a piece of property on some land, are we asking permission to put a structure there?
Mm,
When we're visiting a lake or a river and we're enjoying ourselves, are we at least making an offering of love, of appreciation of the resource that she's providing for us when we're enjoying it? And it's not from this place of shame, and that's the really complicated part, because when she first started talking to me and asking me to bring through the information in my New Earth Now school and some of my other teachings, I felt a lot of shame and a lot of guilt that I didn't feel like I was a good enough human and steward of her to be bringing through any of that stuff. And she showed me that that was part of the process that I had to move through as a human, because I've been conditioned to be ashamed of the way I'm treating her. And this is complicated because I was born near Earth Day time in April, and all of those things were started in a pure, I think, loving vibration. But what I see is that they've created a lot of shame for how we're treating the earth. And the thing that I always come back to, and I've actually talked about this all day today because I was working with people on addictive tendencies, you cannot create change from shame.
mm,
And so the problem that I see with the climate change movements, there's so much truth. Everything, there's truth in all of those things. The information is what we need, but we also need to find compassionate, loving ways to help people create actionable change that is right for their life. And it can't be done from a shameful place. And that's controversial. When I talk to Mother Earth, she says, Katie, yes, emissions, all of the things, we need to be making different choices. Every time we make a better choice with the right intention, we're helping, but it's way bigger than that. It actually starts with people's individual relationships with her. And so my mission right now that she's been giving me in this nonprofit that I'm creating is, it's called Mother Earth's Embrace. And it's actually about teaching people how to be connected to her and be embraced by her. And that's different for every individual. Somebody living in the city might have a different experience of that than somebody living in the country. But when we can start speaking that language with her and seeing her as a living, breathing entity that we can connect with and we can be supported by, it changes the choices that you make naturally. Just like if you're in relationship with somebody, a new partnership, and you're like, oh, I love this person. I'm going to start making choices that are not just about me. I'm going to start factoring them into the decision making. I'm going to start factoring their well-being into the choices that I'm making. That's what partnership is. And with Mother Earth, it's the same. And so while I love all of the initiatives and all of the climate change and all the things that we're doing to try to make it better, it still feels very machined to me and very materialistic and very 3D and like it's missing the mark somehow. And you see that in things like solar panels and wind turbines and electric cars, where sometimes the price of that new technology is even heavier on the earth, where we're pulling minerals and strip mining. There's not a right, simple answer to any of these problems. We have to get more creative, and I think we have to get more connected to one another and to the earth to do that. So that might be controversial for some people. It's a different perspective. It's maybe not what some people would expect me to say when I talk to Mother Earth, but that's what comes through.
So do you believe that having an increased reverence from the collective for Mother Earth would be able to move the needle on some of these natural disasters?
I do. And it's also an increased reverence for humanity
Mm.
because she is a part of us and we are a part of her and we are all one. And so when we learn to treat each other differently as humans, we naturally open to a new state of ownership of our own humanity, which is going to open our hearts more to Mother Earth. And if you look at cultures in Peru and in other places where the focus has always been a connection to Mother Earth, what I'm saying is not radical. This is their way of being, and all of their ceremonies and all of their celebrations are always giving back to Mother Earth and to each other. And they party a lot in Peru. They have more fun there. Like that place is more fun than any other place I've ever been. My friends that we do retreats with there are always having celebrations and and they're enjoying life. It doesn't look like, oh my gosh, we have to stop consuming anything or having any fun on this planet in order to take care of her. She wants to co-create this with us. And I don't know how we move the needle any other way because I think we've proven that the top-down approach where somebody thinks that they're going to solve it all and they're going to be the savior, this is going to be a group effort. And so my mission is to wake as many people up to that in as many ways as I can. And that's how I'm helping Mother Earth too. And people who are saving the whales and dealing with oil spills and all of those things are also doing their part, as long as it's coming from a place of deep, authentic expression in them and a place of care. Please do it. My way is not the only way, but my way is a way that might be more universal for some people that don't know how to help any other way.
So what role do you think that joy plays in all of this?
Well, one of the things I was going to ask you was, what is one of your wins this week or one of your joyful wins? Because that process that we talked about, the 25 for 25 last time, I actually printed out your worksheet and I took it to my girlfriend's gathering that we had on New Year's Day. And we were pulling Oracle cards. We get all of our Oracle decks together and do like a whole thing. And I passed it out and I explained it. And I think I have 17 things written on the list. I didn't get to 25 yet. I'm still building it, but I've already done five.
Oh, good.
And they're like the little things, little examples that we talked about. And so I'm really trying to reclaim some of the glow that I had at the very beginning of lockdown. The world was kind of shut down for a few weeks, even though I was still seeing as many clients online and Zoom. It was almost like we gave ourselves permission to play and enjoy and be in our house and do the things that we wanted to do or go outside and do the things that we wanted to do. Even though there was so much hard stuff going on during the pandemic, I'm trying to reclaim some of that light that I saw and some of that peace that I saw at the beginning of 2020.
Mm.
That's such an odd thing to say because maybe some people weren't peaceful then, but I had a lot of peace at that time, and I know a lot of people slowed way down. So that's how I'm trying to cultivate joy right now. What about you?
So for me, I winter is always interesting for me. I'm not a big fan of winter. I'm not a big fan, but I recently heard something and it really just really resonated with me. And it was like, is your life a pursuit of happiness or is it an expression of joy? And I thought, well, right, that's yes, that's that's really what that 25 for 25 list is, right? So I think this week is what I really tried to come back to that because I'm cold here. It seems like, my place just doesn't warm up. That doesn't make me very happy, but I'm just like, okay, I can be okay with this. I can have little moments of joy. I like my tea, I like my slippers. I like just really trying to come back to that, like really expressing joy instead of pursuing happiness was really profound for me this week.
Yeah.
So I tried to do that every day in any way that I could.
I love what you're talking about there with the pursuit of happiness piece, because one of the things that's come up in session the last few days that is interesting, that's gotten me thinking, is I've had a client that came forward and was saying, I think I'm a little bit addicted to the little carrot that I get in this relationship. Always trying to think I'm going to get more, but I just get a little bit. And she was talking about a specific relational dynamic, but that particular pattern of we're getting just enough, but not enough to satiate us feels like that pursuit of happiness thing
Yeah.
in 2023 when I brought through my New Earth Now school. So it was like a year-long program. And I took people through every system and structure. So finance, government, religion, all these different structures that were created in a lot of polarity and helped people to kind of disconnect from those stories and those systems. I feel like what we did then and what the guides talked about is actually occurring now, where
Mm.
these systems, we're seeing them start to break down. That's kind of what's happened on January 20th. We got lots of chaos coming in, lots of new beginnings, depending on which way you want to look at it. Everybody has their own political opinions. But it's a necessary part of the healing process that things have to fall apart and then new things have to be formed. And it seems like a lot of these systems were set up to dangle the carrot just enough and to keep us coming back for more, but they're never actually fulfilling and nourishing humanity. And I think we have to start building things on this planet and individual things in our lives that actually nourish us. And I think we're a little bit addicted to the malnourishment. I feel like a lot of these systems can be very abusive. And as things are starting to break down, Mother Earth is going to keep talking to us about our choices of how we're using our resources and how we're connecting to her, because she's wanting to create stability for us in our connection with her. Because what she says to me is, I see that all of the things that you've created are going to change and people are going to be scared. And I want them to be connected to me so I can help them to stay stable so they can get the divine inspiration of how to build something new on this planet and create change in a positive, beautiful way.
A question for you about Mother Earth's desire for us to have more reverence and to do these things, to move the needle with the natural disasters. By not doing those things, is that a punishment? Having all these, the hurricanes and the earthquakes and the fires and the tornadoes and the winter weather?
No, I've talked with her about that because that was my first reaction when the hurricane happened. And I felt that get triggered inside of me. And what she showed me is it's not a punishment. Like, this is not a smiting thing. That's religious programming that we're working through. It's not something that's a commentary on our worth as individuals and our choices in that way. It's an inevitable reaction to something that isn't working. Meaning, let me see if I can explain this. So, when Mother Earth has a purge, her purge looks like a fire, a tornado, a hurricane, earthquake, a volcano eruption. When humans have a purge of an excess of dense energy, it looks like illness, emotional disruption, mental breakdown. We have our own way of navigating that. And so natural disasters are a product of Mother Earth's release of the energy that she is processing on our behalf to try to move us forward as a collective. And if we are tuned into her, she can actually guide us into a way to navigate that where the impacts are lessened. And we can get signs and signals and we can have the things that we need to navigate as well as possible. Now, there will still be some people who are meant to be a part of that process and might have an impact to their life in the process, whether that is a death or a loss of property, but there's no punishment in that. Just like when something really bad happens to us, we get in a car accident or we, experience a tragedy, it's not meant to be a punishment for the soul. It's meant to invite the soul to find more resource within themselves and courage within themselves to make different choices in their life and to actually better their life on the other side.
It just made me think of my Kabbalah teacher, speaking of the fires in LA, and he lost his home.
Mm.
And so he's been speaking to loss and natural disaster also. And from his perspective, we really don't know what's good or bad. It's an opportunity to expand one's vessel so for more light from the creator can come down to that vessel. Also, an opportunity to go inward and an opportunity to get closer to the creator. I thought that was actually a beautiful way to look at it. So where do you see this all going in the next several years?
Oh, I see lots of different timelines, and I'm very quick to say I'm not a prognosticator of futures, but I read the energies and I see possibilities and I see where we're heading, and then we can make a big turn really quickly as a collective. So the first thing that I want to say is that if you're in the doomsday mode, that's not the intention, me saying that, hey, I think we're going to have more natural disasters. I do think we're going to see a lot of major cities and important places on the planet have big experiences this year. That's kind of this Aquarian energy that we're in, where it's about how are we coming together as humans. And unfortunately, what I witness in humanity is that we tend to come together through tragedy. And I hate that that's what happens because I see that we could do it through so many more joyful ways, and we do, but it's not as pronounced as when we're going through really hard things. Hard things bring people together. And so I see that there's going to continue to be a lot of hard things, and we're going to see some real weird stuff go down this year, and weird things come into truth and come to the light of day, things that we don't expect, and things that are great surprises and weird surprises and maybe bad surprises. And through it all, we're going to have to work really hard to stay centered and to take care of each other. Because the only thing that we actually have besides our ability to care for and monitor this system is how we can show up for one another in community. And I think community, and I've been saying this for 2 years, is
Yes.
the most important thing. And I still have people who are in resistance to community, and it is so hard for me because they'll show up and say, I'm so lonely and I don't have anybody to turn to. And then I say, well, what are you doing to build community? And they just look at me. And so we're afraid. And I know why that's happening. We're afraid to connect with one another. And we've had so
Okay,
many.
so what do you do to build community?
Well, when I know that there's something that I want to do or I want to create and I don't see anybody else doing it, I am brave and I create the thing. I will do the thing, even though it's hard. Running and creating community is a pain in the tuchus most of the time because you have to deal with so many different personalities. But in the end, if there's nobody else creating it and you really want it, then take an action. Start with one person. Community can begin with two people. And there's so many different ways to do it. And I'm encouraged because I think it's already happening. I'm hemming and hawing a little bit just because of what I hear from individuals. And it tends to be empathic and sensitive people who are afraid because of all of the polarization that's happened and just the wounds, the traumas that we have of being in community and being in friendship and relationship. It can be hard. I think we have to work on that. I think we have to work on those wounds and try to get past them and say, oh, this person may not be my favorite person, but that doesn't mean that all of these other people that are showing up in this community can't have anything for me,
Mhm.
right? And and you have to know where your people are, right? You got to start. And the only way you can figure that out is by knowing who the heck you are.
Yeah, for sure. Well, sometimes it's an experiment, don't you think? Even if you know yourself.
Yeah, I think finding out who you are is an ever evolving process, and your systems and communities around you will change as you figure out more of who you are. But take the chance, do the brave thing, put yourself out there, be vulnerable, be authentic. It's scary, but do the thing anyways.
Yes, absolutely.
So closing thoughts from you on what you feel like Mama Earth is saying to us. I want to hear from you because you heard from me. Like, what do you think is happening with all of this?
Hmm. What do I think that Mother Earth is saying to all of us? I don't know, Katie. Actually, I don't know because I'm still struggling with all that we've talked about. I'm like still processing all of it. Like, what do I think that Mother Earth is saying to all of us? I think that really just, hmm,
What's she saying to you?
what Mother Earth is saying to me is, I think that's part of my frustration with winter, honestly, because I cannot be outside and I cannot get well, I feel as though I can't get the grounding that I normally can get and being in nature and all the signs and synchronicities that are always around me. I mean, I still get them, but not as much as I do when I'm out in nature. So that's a little frustrating for me. That's why winter is frustrating for me.
I think that's what winter invites us to do. We have to push past the resistance. We have to bundle up. We have to get out there and do the thing anyways. And even when we can't because it's too cold or too snowy or the weather's too bad, she's not gone anywhere. She's still here. She's always here.
I always have the intention of bundling up and, getting out in nature. What are your last thoughts on the whole thing?
I think that everything is always inviting us back to love first, hopefully, for loving all the parts of ourselves. And from that place of love, figuring out how to love one another and how to, if we've been injured by the earth or gone through an eco trauma, how do we come back to loving her and trusting her again? And what do we learn in that process of remembering? I think that's what it is for me. And I would love to say that, the things that are happening in LA are going to create all brand new beginnings and it's all going to be roses, but it's going to be hard. Recovering from something like that is hard. Same thing in in Western North Carolina with the hurricanes and other places that have been through natural disasters. But my hope is that within that people will learn something about each other and maybe they'll be able to be helped by people that they maybe would have written off in the past or judged. Maybe it'll change people's perspectives of one another as humans. I sure hope that comes from this because that would be a beautiful, positive thing. And I hope people can remember to look for that instead of staring at the dark and getting sucked into just the fear and being consumed by the tragedy of it. I hope that they can witness that, but not stay stuck in it. And then we
Absolutely.
can figure this out and we can shift some things and, we can navigate and find ways to build in different ways and do different things to navigate ways that are less destructive because Mama Earth's going to keep purging like we do as humans and we have to navigate this together.
Well said. Thank you for that, Katie.
This is something near and dear to my heart. So thank you for chatting with me about this today, Debbie, and thank you for showing up even though you've had a rough couple of weeks.
Really wasn't that bad. But I think also just reminded me that when I was going through it, I'm like, oh, we don't know how long this water is going to be. What? Oh my gosh. But it always ends. It always does end. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Let us know how this lands for you. This is a big topic, lots of complication in it. Y'all can receive some of that medicine from Mama Earth and hear the love and let us know how it lands for you. And we'll be back next month with another topic.
Thank you. Bye.